You know, when you book a flight, what you see, that confirmation page, the email, that is just the absolute tip of a massive digital iceberg. Underneath the surface, there's this incredible unseen network of systems all talking to each other, all across the globe. So let's dive into this hidden world that actually makes your trip possible.
I mean, it feels instant, doesn't it? You click confirm, and boom, you're booked. But in those few seconds and in all the time leading up to your flight, there's this whole digital drama playing out. Your reservation gets created, it gets a digital passport, it crosses borders, and it even gets handed off between different companies. All of this happens before you've even started packing.
So, in this explainer, we're going to follow the secret life of your flight booking. First, we'll look at its digital DNA. Then we'll see how it crosses borders, virtually. We'll watch the great airline handoff, understand what it takes to finally unlock that boarding pass, and then we'll map out this whole invisible network.
All right, so where does this journey actually begin? Well, it starts right at the moment of creation. The second you confirm your booking, the system just gets to work, building the digital blueprint for your entire trip.
And the cornerstone of that whole blueprint is something called the passenger name record, or PNR. You should think of it like your trip's birth certificate. It's this unique master file, and every single thing that happens from this point on, choosing a seat, requesting a meal, you name it, it all gets tied back to this one PNR.
Building this PNR basically follows 4 key steps. First, the flights themselves are added in. Then, your name gets attached, and that officially links you, the person, to this trip. Next up is reserving a seat, which, by the way, has its own secret world we'll get to in a sec. And finally, the system sets a time limit, a window of time where you have to actually pay for the ticket.
And yeah, speaking of seats, there's a whole secret language hiding in plain sight on those seat maps. The system doesn't just see a seat as open or taken. Oh no, it sees codes. X for an exit row, B for bulkhead. It can even see a U for an undesirable seat. Maybe one that doesn't recline or has a bad view. It's this hidden layer of data that actually determines what options you get shown.
Okay, remember that 4th step? The time limit? That's officially called the TTL, or ticketing time limit. And this rule is absolutely crucial. It's the system's way of saying, look, I'm holding this seat for you, but not forever. This is what stops seats on really popular flights from just being held indefinitely.
But here's the thing. Not all time limits are the same. An airport time limit is kind of like a soft hold. The system won't just automatically delete it. But an extended time limit? That's a hard deadline. If you miss it, the system is programmed to automatically cancel the entire booking. So yeah, the stakes are pretty different depending on which one your ticket has.
All right, so your PNR exists. Your ticket is bought. What's next? Well, long before you even think about finding your passport, your digital identity has already crossed international borders and passed a full health screening. Let's look at how that happens.
This is all possible thanks to this incredibly powerful database called Thematic. Just think of it as the ultimate rulebook for global travel. It knows the passport, visa, and health rules for pretty much every country, and it is updated constantly. For an airline, Thematic is the undisputed source of truth.
So as soon as your trip is booked, the airline system pings Thematic. It acts like a digital border agent, and it checks your whole journey. Is your passport valid long enough? Do you need a visa where you're going? What about that connecting airport you're only in for an hour? Are there any vaccination requirements? It vets everything, all automatically.
And here's a fantastic example of just how deeply integrated all of this is. For a country like Australia, the airline can literally use its system to apply for an electronic travel authority, which is basically an instant e-visa for you. The request goes out, and seconds later, an approval or denial comes right back. Your visa can be sorted out before you've even decided what to pack. It's amazing.
Okay, now let's make things a little more complicated. What happens when your trip involves more than one airline? Or maybe when one airline is handling the check-in desk for another one? This is where a smooth digital handoff becomes absolutely essential.
So first, we need to know who the players are. You have the operating carrier, that's the airline that owns the plane and provides the crew. Then you have the ground handler, that's the company actually doing the check-in on the ground. A lot of the time it's the same company, but very often it's a totally different airline that's been hired to do the job.
So how on earth do these different companies, with their completely separate computer systems, talk to each other seamlessly? Well, they use a universal language called EDI-FACT. It's a standardized format for messages that makes sure a request from Airline A's system is perfectly understood by Airline B's system. It is literally the digital Rosetta Stone of the entire aviation industry.
Now, to really get this handoff, you have to understand the virtual coupon record, or VCR. See, back in the old days of paper tickets, every single flight on your trip had its own little paper coupon. The VCR is just the modern digital version of that. It's the asset, the thing of value that represents your right to be on that specific flight.
And this is how that digital handshake actually works. First, the operating carrier sends the passenger lists over to the ground handler. When that happens, the handler system gets temporary airport control over those digital VCRs. That's what lets them check you in. Then, after the flight takes off, they send a message back saying what happened, like if the coupon was used, and control goes back to the original airline.
We've made it. We are at the final stage of this whole hidden journey, the moment of check-in. This is when all this incredible behind-the-scenes work comes together for one purpose: to unlock your boarding pass.
The specific messages that kick this whole thing off are the PNL and the ADL. The passenger name list, the PNL, is the first big data dump of all the passengers on a flight, and it gets sent hours beforehand. After that, the system sends out little updates called add/delete lists, or ADLs, to keep up with any last-minute bookings or cancellations. And this quote, right from the source material, it really pinpoints the critical moment. Sending the PNL isn't just a heads up. It's the trigger. It is the formal action that passes control of those electronic ticket coupons from the airline that owns the flight to the company that's going to check you in.
So what happens, really, is that the ground handler gets a temporary working copy of your ticket record. They don't get the original. And you can actually see this in the system. The status of your ticket coupon literally changes from OK to CTRL for controlled. It's this temporary control that gives the check-in agent the power to get into your booking and finally print out that boarding pass.
Wow, we have covered a lot of ground here, decoding a journey that is completely invisible to pretty much every traveler. So let's do a quick recap of the secret language we've learned along the way.
We started with the PNR, your trip's unique digital ID. We saw the TTL, the deadline to buy the ticket. We met Thematic, the all-knowing digital border agent. We learned about EDIFACT, the universal language that lets airlines talk to each other, and the VCR, which is your digital flight coupon. And finally, we saw how the PNL and ADL lists trigger that final handover for check-in.
You know, this incredibly complex web of messages and handoffs was built over decades. But as technology like biometrics and AI starts to make travel more and more seamless, letting you walk from the curb to the gate without ever showing a document, it really makes you wonder, which piece of this intricate, unseen network will be the first one to go? What part of this digital world is going to disappear next?